Everyone, I'm Kelly Greene, Minister for Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. I'm honored to be speaking to you today from the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I'm joined by Lana Popham, Minister of Agriculture and Food, and Connie Chapman from the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, as well as technical experts from the Ministries of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, Transportation and Transit, and Agriculture and Food. As of this afternoon, there's approximately 100 properties under evacuation order and 1,200 properties under evacuation alert. This remains a dynamic and evolving situation, and the risks are real. As forecast, the South Coast received heavy precipitation overnight and into this morning. EMCR and partner ministries are supporting local governments to assess vulnerable areas. Environment and Climate Change Canada has issued several rainfall warnings for the Lower Mainland and across the region, and we're seeing increased flood and landslide risk in the North Shore area. There are recent reports of a rock slide along Highway 20, and we'll update as soon as we have more information. The ground is saturated in many areas. The rivers are full. Additional rainfall is going to increase the potential for more flooding and landslides. Folks should avoid riverbanks and waterways. The water is very high and the banks may not be stable. I urge everyone in affected areas to continue to follow the directions of local authorities, stay informed, and be prepared to act if the conditions change. Over the weekend, the province deployed over 30,000 sandbags, as well as provincial staff to communities in need, and provided sandbag machines when necessary. The province has additional flood control assets available, such as sandbags and tiger dams, and we are ready to provide further supports as needed. The best way for people to access sandbags is to connect with their local government or First Nation. I'd like to speak directly to people who are on evacuation order throughout these storm events. Being evacuated from your home is an incredibly difficult experience. The waiting, the wondering if you're able to return home and what part of your home is going to be impacted, that's some of the hardest parts. I want to thank you for taking these orders seriously. The province, along with emergency responders, local governments, we are doing everything we can to help keep people safe, to keep farms safe, communities safe, and we're supporting evacuees with emergency supports for those essential needs. We know that there are still long days and nights ahead, and it's essential that we all continue to work together and do what's necessary to prepare for all eventualities. I encourage people to take the steps now, if you haven't already, to be prepared. That includes having a household emergency kit with the essentials should you need to stay home or if there is a power outage. I'm also asking people to have a grab-and-go bag ready. It's a smaller version of an emergency kit that you can take with you if you're asked to evacuate. Please continue to check with your local government or First Nation to make sure that you're getting up-to-date information on their website or social media on local flood response. Evacuation order information, evacuation alert information, and the recommended actions to take in each circumstance is available on emergencyinfobc.ca. I also want to recognize the farmers who have been working tirelessly over the last many days, not only to care for their own animals, but also to help their neighbors. Your efforts reflect the strength and compassion of the Fraser Valley and the province as a whole. I also want to take a moment to recognize police, fire departments, public works crews, search and rescue crews, hydro crews, volunteers, and all emergency responders who have been working very long hours over the last week to help keep people safe. This is demanding work, and it means everything to the people who are affected. I'll now pass it over to Minister Popham.
Good afternoon. Lana Popham, Minister of Agriculture and Food for the province. For this moment, there are no reports of rising water on farms, and there's been no calls to our emergency agri-service line over the last 24 hours. So that's good news. My ministry staff remain in close touch with farmers and industry associations to ensure that they are prepared and that they're receiving timely information. My ministry has been in personal contact with each poultry farm that has been flooded, and they're assisting them in navigating the responsibilities that come with that, including animal disposal. I continue to text with farmers in the Fraser Valley, and I can tell that there's obviously still a state of worry, but they seem to be confident that they're as ready as they can be, given what's happening. The advisories or the flood watch is up in the Pemberton area. I've reached out to a farmer up in the Pemberton area who farms quite close to the river up there. And they mentioned to me that it was pretty soggy, but the river levels, although they're high, they're not setting off alarm bells for them at this moment. She also threw in that it may not be the perfect moment for a farm tour, but it seems like it's a pretty good day for ducks on her farm. There's work that's being done to ensure that livestock can be relocated if more flooding occurs over the next 12 hours. I mentioned previously that we do have one hog farm that currently is basically cut off from receiving supplies, and feed is a big concern there. Not sure if we're able to get a feed truck in. They have about 1 day's worth of food left. So we're working with that farm and looking at possibly delivering food by helicopter if that's needed, which is something that happened also in 2021. It's a great example of partnerships that happen in the time of need, and we will continue to do this work just to avoid any animal welfare issues. I met with the Federal Minister of Agriculture this morning, who obviously is very concerned about what's happening there. And I made sure that we asked for more support. Minister Heath MacDonald and I had a meeting of the minds and agreed that more needs to be done. We need to make sure that the federal government's at the table when we're requesting funding to try and find solutions for this situation into the future. Mayor Siemens of Abbotsford, of course, made it very clear that he needs the federal government to be at the table, and I support his call for stronger action on that from Ottawa. In terms of our animal and plant health center, I've told you that it's closed until at least the end of January. We're not out of the woods yet, as there's forecasting rain over the next day, but we're taking every measure that we can to protect that center. Over 2,000 sandbags have been put in place, and the facility is running on generators currently, but it's a really critical piece of infrastructure for us at this time of year. We obviously are still dealing with avian influenza. Those samples are now being shipped out to other provinces, but it's also a hunting season, and we do a lot of testing for chronic waste disease, which is a disease that affects our ungulates, so deer, elk, moose, and caribou. And we just shipped 1,200 samples for chronic waste disease off to Ontario today. So again, it's the process is in place, but we're unable to do that testing right now. Our chief veterinarian's office remains available to support any welfare concerns, so that hasn't changed. And just another reminder that for farmers, if they feel that they're in trouble and need some assistance, 1-888-221-7741 is the number to call. Thank you. Everyone take care. And I'm passing it over to Connie Chapman.
Thank you, Minister. The weather event that we had been watching for Sunday Monday has now since passed. Peak flows in streams are occurring and will continue to occur over the next couple hours before starting to recede. A flood warning does remain on the Sumas and Chilliwack River, though the Nooksack River is not expected to overtop its banks, and we will continue to see the Sumas River ease the flood levels and drain out. A flood warning also remains for the North Shore Mountains, where many of the streams are just starting to peak and then will start to recede. The Seymour River watershed saw a punch from the system with a significant increase in flows. Vancouver Island and South Coast are also starting to see the system's peak, and then also we'll start to see these water levels decrease. We are anticipating localized rain tomorrow at lower elevations, specifically for Hope, Chilliwack, and Abbotsford area. Though with this being said, the freezing level is going to start to drop, and the precipitation at higher elevations is likely to fall as snow. For the remainder of the week, we can expect ongoing unsettled weather, but cooler temperatures means that more snowfall will happen at the higher elevations versus rain. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll open it up for questions in the room.
We'll now go to questions. Please press *1 to enter the queue. And we have one question in the room, which we will start with. Please state your name and your outlet. You'll have one question and one follow-up. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Chuck Chang, Canadian Press. This question is primarily for Minister Popham. I was wondering, I know, Minister, you have mentioned before that you were not comfortable releasing the number of chickens that were affected in this flooding event, but are you able to tell us more precisely what the number of farms that might have been affected, flooded, went underwater during this event? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, so we have about 6 farms that have been affected and have been flooded in the poultry industry, and our ministry has been in contact with them as they try and sort out the next steps.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. Minister, and this might be for Minister Greene or anybody else in the room. I'm not quite sure. There has been UBC experts that have mentioned that considering the cost of the recovery of the farms and all the costs necessary to put in some of the flood mitigation, that it may be a good idea to go into a managed retreat, quote unquote, of the Sumas Prairies area, considering its propensity to flood in events like this. Is the province looking at that in any way? What's your thoughts on potentially buying out properties and potentially moving out of some of these neighborhoods that flood easily, more permanent basis rather than flood mitigation? Thank you.
I certainly recognize how difficult these events that we've had have been on people. It's very difficult for people who have to be evacuated or even be on evacuation alert. I know that there's communities across BC who have had successive years of impacts for climate events, whether that's flooding or fire, and it definitely takes a toll on people. That said, we have work in the Sumas area at a flood table. We've got 2 local governments and 3 First Nations, as well as the province there. We're hoping to have the federal government rejoin us in this very important work. And the work that's going forward there is on how to reduce risk for the entire region, and ensuring that a solution in one area isn't to the detriment of another area in that region. We are including in that assessment pumping capabilities, diking, as well as temporary water storage. That work is underway. It's very important. This area is critical to BC and Canada's economy as well as agriculture. It's a key area with transportation networks, critical infrastructure, and more. We need to make sure that we're looking after this area and reducing risk for everybody there.
Okay, we will now go to the phone lines. We have Kimberly Davidson from CBC. Kimberly, go ahead.
Hi, I would like to ask a question about ways, starting with Highway 3. I was wondering if there has been a scope of work, so you know all the things that need to be done there, what kind of resources are on it right now, and a timeline for reopening.
I'll turn that over to Janelle.
Thanks, Minister. Appreciate it. So in terms of resources, we have about 5 or 6 different crews in different locations across of Highway 3 between Hope and Manning Park. Right now, we've identified 21 discrete sites. We've managed so far to clean out 2 of those sites with the expectation that we can get through 4 more of them by about midweek. 5 sites in particular have very large crosscuts across the major highway. So we're actually having to dig out a culvert that's failed and do some replacement work. So fairly significant amount of work. We're still completing our overall assessment in terms of timeline, but expect in the next day or so to have a sense of when we expect to have that highway reopened.
Kimberly, do you?
I do. It's about the other 2 highways proactively closed. When are you going to make a call on reopening Highway 1 and Highway 99?
Janelle?
Yeah, Highway 1 and Highway 99 both reopened around lunch today, so they have been reopened. I will note that Highway 1 through the Fraser Canyon does have a travel advisory as a result of high winds through that area. So again, drivers traveling through that should expect that it may close in with short notice in the event that we see changing conditions out there. But at this point, both of those highways are now reopened.
Question is from Jay Zabinal, CBC Vancouver. Jay, go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. My question is for Minister Greene. Are there any immediate financial support announcements beyond the existing disaster programs for residents, businesses, and trucking companies who have faced loss in businesses for their peak flooding this month?
We're still in the middle of the event, and we're supporting local governments in being able to assess damage, whether that's through engineering capabilities, assessing with drones. So that scoping work is underway. We do have programs in the province that can support people post-disaster in the event that we're having a widespread uninsurable event. For support for folks right now, we're in the phase of response where we're supporting people through emergency support services. So that's looking after people's essential needs in the event that they're evacuated, housing, so shelter, clothing, and food, and other like toiletries and things like that. So that's the place where we're at right now, and certainly we'll be working with local governments to work through our disaster financial assistance in the future.
Jay, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. For small businesses and farms, in 2023, the BC Ombudsperson highlighted the problem of months-long delays in receiving DFA payments. How will the government prevent that problem this time?
We've made a lot of improvements to disaster financial assistance. Some of the biggest improvements have been in the fact that we've moved to a fully online capability. And so certainly people are moving through the queue more quickly, and it's easier for staff to make assessments. And having that online capability, we've gotten really good feedback from people in affected areas. We also are making improvements to who's eligible. There's a broader category now of people who are eligible for disaster financial assistance. Making sure that we're expanding that eligibility is important for access to the program. And we also increase the maximum disaster financial assistance limit. Combined, I think all of these improvements really address some of the concerns of the program previously. And so for folks who are interested or need to know evacuation alert and evacuation order information, that information is found on emergencyinfobc.ca. I really recommend, with all of the impacts to travel routes, that people make sure that their vehicle is fully charged or have a full tank of gas, and that you've got supplies on hand in case you're unexpectedly stopped. And visit drivebc.ca before you undertake your trip. Please be prepared. Being prepared is an important aspect of being safe in an emergency. All times of the year, preparedbc.ca has excellent guides on how to keep you and your household safe in the event of an emergency. Take care and stay safe.
And that concludes today's event. Thank you very much, everyone.